ముందుగా ప్రియమైన విద్యార్థులకు మరియు వారి తల్లిదండ్రులకు నమస్కారం. నా పేరు కె వెంకన్న జూనియర్ కాలేజ్ చైర్మన్. నేను ఈ రోజు 10th క్లాస్ విద్యార్థులను దృష్టిలో పెట్టుకొని మాట్లాడడం జరుగుతుంది. అది ఏమిటనగా, మనందరికీ తెలుసు, గత 2 సంవత్సరాలుగా కరోనా కారణంగా విద్యార్థులు ఎటువంటి పరీక్షలు రాయకుండానే పై తరగతులు పంపడం జరుగుతుంది. ఫలితంగా ఐఐటి జేఈ మరియు నీట్ లాంటి జాతీయ స్థాయి పరీక్షలను సాధించడం కష్టతరం అవుతుంది. దీనిని అధిగమించడానికి మరియు 10వ తరగతి పరీక్షలో అత్యధిక మార్కులు సాధించడానికి నేను మీ ముందుకు కె వెంకన్న జూనియర్ కాలేజ్ ప్లాట్ఫామ్ ద్వారా అనుభవజ్ఞులైన అధ్యాపకులచే ఉచిత వీడియో క్లాసులు, హ్యాండ్ రిటన్ నోట్స్ మరియు గత ప్రశ్నపత్రాల సమాధానాల విశ్లేషణ ఇవ్వబడును. కాబట్టి నేను విద్యార్థులకు చెప్పదలుచుకున్నది ఏంటంటే, ఈ ఉచిత వీడియో క్లాసులను మరియు హ్యాండ్ రిటన్ నోట్స్లను క్లాస్ రూమ్ లో కూర్చొని చదువుకున్నంత సీరియస్ చదువుకోవాలను. ఇంకొకటి ఏమిటనగా, ఈ యొక్క క్లాసులు విన్న వెంటనే అర్థం చేసుకొని ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయవలను. ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయడం అంటే కేవలం చదవడం కాదు, పేపర్ మీద రాయవలను. అలాగైతే గుర్తుండిపోతుంది. దీంతో పాటు మీ యొక్క నాలెడ్జ్ ని పరీక్షించుకున్న కొరకు త్వరలో ప్రీ ఫైనల్ పరీక్షలు కూడా నిర్వహించబడు. ఈ యొక్క అవకాశాన్ని సద్వినియోగం చేసుకోవాలని 10th చదివే విద్యార్థులకు విజ్ఞప్తి చేస్తున్నాను.
Now I am today with the 10th lesson, food security, which is a very important topic in the social studies of class 10. Now students, tell me one thing, what are the basic amenities of life? What are the basic necessities of life? Let me put the question even more clearly. How can any person survive? How can any person survive? How can any living organism survive? Now putting across, let's focus on the human race. How can any person survive? For any person to survive, what are the basic requirements of the life are? Food, right? The food we eat, clothes we wear, the shelter we live. Yes or no? These three are the basic amenities of the life: food, clothing and shelter. Without these three, any person, anybody cannot survive under the sun globally. It's an accepted fact, right? So obviously the lesson itself says the food security. We all are living in the vibrant country, gigantic country like India. How is food available for every person under the sun? Is food available for every person in the country? We are going to understand all these intricacies in this lesson, food security. Before getting into the lesson in depth, I will tell you children, post-independence, pre-independence, before the independence, in 1943 and 45, India has seen a drastical famine. What is a famine? A situation where people die practically out of hunger. They don't get proper food facility, they don't get proper food, water and all basic amenity, which is the basic amenity for survival. They does not get the food, and that situation is called as a famine. And in 1943 and 45, in Bengal famine, many of the people, crores and millions of the people have died. Why did this situation arise? Because the food distribution, the availability of the food was not equally done amongst all the people. That is pre-independence. Now post-independence, what is pre-independence? Before independence, when we got the period before the independence is called as the pre-independence, and post-independence is the period that we have got after the period after the independence is called as the post-independence, right? So obviously let us understand how did our government cope up with this alarming issue, food security. How is it trying to get over this problem of food security after we got the independence? This is all what we are going to understand in this lesson, food security, and what are the different ways that our government has inculcated and instilled that food is reachable to every nook and corner of the society, and all the poor people, everybody, nobody stays, nobody stays hunger, everybody is getting the basic requirement of the life, that is the food requirement. So this is all we are going to understand in this lesson, food security. Now producing sufficient, what is food security for the country? What do you understand food security? What do you mean by the word food security? Producing sufficient amount of food grains is an important requirement which is called as a food security. We need to have that security whole of the country should be secure. Every person, haves and have nots, rich and poor, everybody should be getting a morsel of rice equally. This is called as food security. So what do you mean, what is it we'll have to focus on? Producing sufficient amount of food grains is an important requirement of our food security. And one way, how can we get this food security? Ultimately, we cannot sit here and we cannot get the food grains. The farmers will have to cultivate the food grains, and then from farm to plate, from farm to plate. This is what they say, from farm to plate. The farmers will have to cultivate, and from cultivation we get the food grains. How are the cultivation methods in India? A majority of we know that even today, even this 21st century, even still today, majority of the people, almost majority of the country of the people are still dependent on the agriculture as their livelihood. But are we adopting the new techniques for agriculture in our country? Partially yes, partially no. But some of the farmers are adopting the new technical methods, new modern techniques to enhance the agriculture more, but partially some of the people are still not adopting this new modern techniques. And one more thing we'll have to remember, that is most important thing what we'll have to remember is, India is dependent still on the monsoons for the agriculture. And what is the best way not depending on the monsoons is irrigation method. What is irrigation? The word irrigation we have been listening since almost 6th and 7th classes, we have been listening this word irrigation. What do you mean by irrigation? Storage of water or utilization of water when you don't have monsoon. Utilization of water when we does not have monsoons properly, where the agriculture does not stop and it keeps on growing the process and the provision of water, this is called as irrigation. And obviously what are the techniques that Indian government is trying to tell to the farmers? You know, children, the one way is to expand irrigation, but use water in a manner that it is shared and made available. And the most important thing is, the water should be available for every farmer to cultivate the crops. Right, to get a proper productive yield, the farmers need to cultivate the crops. And for cultivation of crops, what do we require? We require water as a mandatory. So what is it we'll have to do? We'll have to make sure that the water is available to everyone. Equitable distribution of water is done to everybody, so that every farmer gets the water and every farmer gets the proper yield in the agricultural fields. Okay. And now, and apart from that, as I said prior only now, a couple of minutes before, I said the irrigation facilities are not really up to the mark in the country. So, you know, other technique what we can follow to encounter this problem is, planting drought resistant crops as per local conditions. Planting drought, what do you mean by drought resistant crops? The utilization of the water in these crops is minimal. Utilization of water in these crops is minimal, and there are certain type of crops which can retain the drought situation as well. They are drought resistant. Even though the availability of the water is minimal, in any situations these crops can sustain and give a good productive yield. So obviously the scientists and everyone of them are still vigorously working in this area, and so obviously the best method is planting drought resistant crops as per local conditions. Make sure that soil and other natural resources are not depleted. And one most important thing is, we'll have to take into consideration is, trying to get the cultivation more, trying to get the high productive yield. We have majority of the farmers started using the chemical fertilizers, which are absolutely harmful. And what do? They damage the crops, as well as they damage, what happens to see, other natural resources which are abundantly found in the soil in the form of the minerals are being depleted. Means what? They are eradicated. They just go away. So obviously this utilization of chemicals and fertilizers also should be very minimal. I cannot say that they cannot be stopped. Other alternative ways is, every farmer can adopt organic farming, which is picking up a lot. Organic farming is nothing but the utilization of the natural resources like cow dung, buffalo dung, all these things. Obviously, so these are the different methods of cultivating the crops, and also by these things as well we can encounter the problem of the food security, getting good productive yield in the agricultural fields. Okay. And now one more thing is cultivation in India by intensive application. As I said, the same point, cultivation in India is being done by intensive vigorous application of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which is absolutely harmful. The crops which are grown in this chemical fertilizers and pesticides, when we consume, it is not even healthy for us. Yes, students, it is not even healthy for us. So always we need to encourage organic farming. Whenever we go for the outlets where you find the organic farming utilities, pick them up, so that we encourage organic farming and the farmers get encouraged, boosted, and they are bounced back to the organic farming. This is as well we can do one of the most encouraging methods. We can encourage the farmers. In the broader spectrum, believe me, every one of us are contributing to the food security. It's not only the government, every one of us even can contribute to the food security. Okay. And what rice and wheat are cultivated in unscientific methods. What is the staple? What is the staple? What are the staple foods here? Everybody either consumes, southern part of the country consumes rice and northern part of the country consumes wheat. I am not saying majority of the people they consume wheat, in the southern part of the country they consume rice. Agreed. Why is that southern part of the people consume rice? Because the rice is extensively grown in the southern part of the country, especially it is once upon a time AP Andhra Pradesh was called as the rice bowl of India. The rice was vigorously grown, high quality rice was grown in Godavari and Krishna belts. Yes, the farmers used to, and still now it happens. Almost in the southern parts of the states, Andhra Pradesh as well contribute the majority of the rice for the rice paddy crops and all. And when the cultivation of the rice and paddy cultivated in very unscientific method. What are unscientific methods? Utilization of again the chemical fertilizers and the pesticides, which is absolutely unadvisable. Okay. And now apart from this, these all are the points which we cover, wherein we are saying that these are the problems that everybody is facing for the food security. And now what is the government trying to do to encounter that food security? You all are students, you all go to private schools and convent schools as well as government schools. Whatever the school, a school is always a school, where people, every child is precious. Believe me students, every child is precious. Immaterial of caste, creed and religion, every child is precious. Every child is precious. Every child should get that basic amenity of the life, that is food, clothing and shelter. Every child should study well and reach the pinnacle of success. And this is what the government is trying to do by encouraging the government schools, establishing government schools. And why is that in the food security am I talking about the government schools? Because I want to update all the children saying that the government has multiple schemes, because you all are the future of the country. Government schools, midday meal scheme as well being inculcated. Midday meal skills, if you go to the private schools, you should understand this, the government schools, the children are being given midday meal schemes, because majority of the government school children, they come from the below the poverty line and all, to enhance their dietary conditions and nutritious value, because they don't get a proper even a morsel of rice in their homes. The government is providing them midday meal scheme, giving them nutritious food in the school only. Not only the government did not stop only there for the midday meal schools, and you have small places where the small children, like play schools you have, the government has started off the small play schools as Anganwadis in the small bastis. In the small local areas, government has started off Anganwadis. What does this Anganwadis do? Anganwadis as well educate them, give them the quality education, but even provide the nutritional food supplement. And apart from that, government is trying to provide quality food for the pregnant woman, lactating woman. Pregnant woman, every one of us know, a mother who is carrying the child in the womb is called as a pregnant woman, and lactating woman.
Hello students, my name is Vishal Kumar Sharma and I did my BTech from IIT Kanpur. Right now I am associated with K Venkana classes, and at K Venkana classes we are bringing your IIT top Delhi faculties. I am an HOD of mathematics at K Venkana classes. Okay. Now, if you are choosing MPC, then you will have a chance to be taught under top Delhi faculties. If you are choosing BIPC as your subject, then you will have not only IIT faculties as well as a proper doctor teaching you. Similarly, we have if you are choosing MEC and CEC, so after second year for your CACPT exam, we have a very expert faculty specializing in CACPT. So what are you waiting for? Come and join KVC.
Now let us focus on the availability of the food grains. Now we have till now we discussed and understood what are the conditions prevailing for the food security, how will we get the, how can we cultivate the food grains. Once the food grains are cultivated, are the food grains available to all? That's a very important question. What is the first requirement of the country? What is the first requirement of the country is to be able to produce food grains for whole of its population. The first question after the introduction of food security comes is every citizen of the country able to access the food, able to access the food grains? This is the question. And so obviously the thing is what is the first requirement of the government of any country? What is it? Make sure to be able to produce food grains to whole of its population, whether it might be poor, haves, have-nots, rich, whatever their status is. The government the primary duty of the government of any country is to see to it that every citizen of the country gets a morsel of rice every day as per the nutritional value information by NIN. This is the first requirement of the country, of every government of the country will have to focus on. And what is the thing is, how do we understand whether the food grains are equally available in a country or not? We know that tons and tons and quintals of food grains are being cultivated every year. But how do we know? How do we understand? How do we estimate the crops which are being yielded and produced? Are they sufficient for the people in the country? Is there any way? How can we estimate the production of the food grains? Yes, there is a way how we can estimate the production of the food grains and all. Government as well has a way to estimate the production of the food grains, keeping in view of its population. And what is that way? And I'll tell you one more thing, children, before getting into this food grains, always understand there is a difference between production and availability of the food grains. Prior, in the first video, we have discussed about the production and different ways of production. There is a difference between production and availability. You need to understand these two different terms. Production of food grains is totally different from the availability of the food grains. What is production of food grains? Cultivating them, getting into a proper shape is called as production of food grains. But availability, once the food grains are being produced by farmers in the form of agriculture, are those available? Are we able to get them? Production is to create, availability is to get. So understand the difference between the production as well as the availability. Are the food grains available for all the people? Availability, now getting across, now understand this point. Once the production is done, are the food grains which are being produced available and sufficient for all the people of the country? How do we understand, how do we estimate that? Availability of the food grains of the year is equal to production of food grains. Please go through this. Production of food grains throughout the year. The production of the food grains whole of the year, what in that you will have to deduct in that? You will have to deduct your seeds, feed and wastage. If you leave all these things, what is the main production of whole of the year? That plus net imports. Imports means what? What is not sufficient, getting out from other countries is called as imports. And when you see imports are being subtracted from the exports, the final value of the food grains is the availability of the food grains in the country. So government as well tries to understand is the availability of the food grains meeting the population's requirements, whole of the populations of the requirements of its own country. And now what are the food, okay, now we understood the difference between the production and the availability of the food grains. Now what are the different types of food grains we have? What are the different types of the food grains we have? The different types of the food grains what we have are categorized into three: edible oils, cereals and pulses. What are edible oils? Like you get oil from sesame, groundnut, sunflower seeds. All these are called as the edible oils which we consume every day in the food. Okay, and even your ghee. All these things come under edible oils. Now coming back to your cereals, what are the cereals? Coarse, there are two cereals are again categorized in two parts, coarse cereals and fine cereals. What are these coarse cereals and fine cereals? You know, coarse cereals, they are jawar, jawar, ragi, bajra and all other millets. Once upon a time, these cereals did not have any weightage. Everybody thought that as coarse cereals they were not really good, and these coarse cereals are generally grown up in the dry parts of the country. Rajasthan, they are grown generally in the dry parts of the country because they don't require that much amount of water as paddy requires. So these are generally grown in the dry parts of the country. And the next other cereals are fine cereals, which are called the rice and this wheat. But now the coarse cereals are otherwise called as the nutri cereals. The coarse cereals are now called as the nutri cereals. Everybody is again back. When we were under the colonial rule, the Britishers discouraged the traditional practices of jawar, ragi, bajra and millets, and they focused on the fine cereals, rice and wheat, and because of which rice and wheat became more popular. But believe me, these all the millets are the traditional practices of the Indians, where Indians remain very healthy. These are the core cereals, and now we are out of the clutches of the colonial rule. Everybody realized that these core cereals are now called as the nutri cereals, which are very, very healthy, and they can form as the staple food of that. See here, as I said, core cereals are highly nutritious. Core cereals are highly nutritious. Why is it all these things are being told to you in class 10? Are you small students? No, there is a reason. There is a reason for this lesson which is being inculcated in your textbook. The Telangana government has very beautifully introduced this topic of food security, because you need to understand, because the students these days are consuming junk foods and all, which is absolutely not advisable. Please stay healthy. Eat nutritious food supplement. It's the high time that you all understand what is good for your health. The food which you get at your home, your mom's kitchen is always the best. Don't go for junk foods. To give you a message, the lesson food security is an amazing lesson, explains the intricacies of the agriculture, availability of the food grains, production of the food grains. It gives an in-depth of all the cereals, at the same time tells you what is best for you. You all are intelligent and amazing students, right? So obviously you all can understand what is best for you. We have an intention behind this. So the intention is very crystal clear. So you understand now the difference between the production and the availability of the food grains.